Formula One pre-season testing is a time of excitement for drivers, teams and fans alike as new cars hit the track. It's all about high hopes and expectations before the realities of a long, hard and sometimes uncompetitive season kick in. But it's also a time when strange things happen. Cars don't work as anticipated, drivers turn up in unexpected places, crashes bring whole teams to a juddering halt, with myriad difficulties coming out of left field to cause surprise and amazement. While once testing was largely conducted out of the public eye, in recent years there has been increased as it happens coverage from the likes of the race. With the eyes of the F1 world locked onto the test venues, it's become impossible to keep such strange goings on under wraps. 10. Camouflage livery. The automotive world is used to camouflage colour schemes shrouding prototype road cars. But it wasn't until 2015 that Red Bull brought this into F1. It launched and then tested the Red Bull RB11 in a special black and white livery conceived to confound photographers, fans and rival technical directors. The livery was inspired by the special helmet design Sebastian Vettel used at the previous year's Italian Grand Prix. Come the start of the season, Red Bull was back in its regular livery, but it did repeat the special testing paint job trick in 2018 with a black, white and blue look. And it also launched and shook down its 2019 car running in a purposeful blue and red colour scheme. 9. Wild weather. Given pre-season testing often takes place in the European winter, the weather can never entirely be trusted. Rain isn't unusual, but there are other problematic phenomena. Snow isn't unheard of, and Fernando Alonso even ran in the snow at Silverstone in 2005. More recently, in Barcelona in 2018, day 3 of the first pre-season test was rendered almost completely useless by a combination of snow and rain. A grand total of 17 laps were logged. Even if F1 opts to go further afield, it's no guarantee of smooth running. In Bahrain 2021, sandstorms struck, while at the same venue in 2009, a test involving Ferrari, BMW Sauber and Toyota was ruined by more intense sandstorms. But sometimes artificial rain is required. At Barcelona in 2018, Pirelli needed wet testing, so deposited water onto the track using a series of trucks before the start of running on the final day of the first pre-season test. This was of negligible use, with vaguely full wet conditions only for the opening hour and cars switching to slicks later on in the morning. Pirelli did the same again in the afternoon, but most just waited for the track to dry out. 8. Lotus goes missing. Lotus was second fastest in the first pre-season test at Jerez in 2012 with Romain Grosjean and completed 1,788 kilometres. So it was a surprise that after completing just 32 kilometres on the morning of the second pre-season test in Barcelona, Lotus announced it could not continue for the rest of the 4 days of running. The problem was first detected as Grosjean approached turn 1 at the highest speed part of the circuit. The movement under load meant that the front suspension arms damaged the chassis thanks to the lightweight carbon fibre mounts embedded in the chassis not being strong enough. As this was the second Lotus E20 chassis, the team was able to put its first chassis on a rig at the factory and replicated the problem. This led to it abandoning running and manufacturing replacement aluminium front suspension mountings for use at the third pre-season test 8 days later. 7. Stuttering start to the V6 turbo hybrid era. The first 2014 pre-season test at Jerez was one of the most eagerly anticipated in years, as it was the debut of the new 1.6 litre V6 turbo hybrid cars. Yet when the track opened, little happened. Lewis Hamilton managed to complete an early installation lap in the Mercedes, which had already been shaken down at Silverstone, but it was 2 hours and 20 minutes before he became the first driver to complete a flying lap. His day later came to an end after just 19 laps when he suffered a front wing failure, but his mileage still amounted to around a fifth of the total completed that day. The 8 cars that ran managed just 93 laps between them, with Red Bull and Caterham not setting a lap time, McLaren unable to leave the garage because of electrical and hydraulics problems, and Marussia not even leaving their UK base until early that morning to take the car to the track. It seemed inconceivable that just 47 days later the teams would be in a fit state to contest the Australian Grand Prix. 6. Williams late, and illegal. It's not unheard of for teams to make a late start to testing, but usually this is by design. In 2019, Williams fully intended to be on track for the first day of testing, but the car hadn't even left the factory in the UK by the time the track was open, as it was still waiting for essential parts to be completed. It wasn't ready to run until the afternoon of the third day of pre-season testing, when George Russell completed 23 laps and set a time just under 8 seconds off the pace. Teammate Robert Kubica managed 48 laps the following day, but Williams got little meaningful work done during that first test. To add insult to injury, it also had to change both its wing mirror and front suspension design prior to the season opening Australian Grand Prix. Its curved wing mirror was replaced by a more orthodox design, while it had to remove a 7th suspension member running along the rear edge of the lower front wishbone because of rules permitting only 6 suspension members. Unsurprisingly, Williams endured a pointless season. We'll move on to our top 5 in a moment, but first we just wanted to thank you for watching the latest video from the race. If you're enjoying it, don't forget to like and subscribe, not only so you don't miss any of our future videos, but also so you support the race and make sure that we can keep doing what we do. 5. DAS is revealed. On the second day of Barcelona pre-season testing in 2020, something strange was spotted in the onboard footage from Lewis Hamilton's Mercedes. On the straights, he appeared to be changing the toe of the front wheels by pulling the steering wheel back, then returning it to normal by pushing it forward prior to turn 1. Mercedes technical director James Allison was happy to reveal it was called DAS, dual axis steering, but stayed tight-lipped on its purpose. Mercedes did not doubt the legality of DAS, having been in communication with the FIA for some time about it. In fact, Allison later revealed the FIA had rejected its initial lever-actuated design, but did accept that it would be legal if activated using only a movement of the steering wheel. The key benefit of DAS proved to be in warming up the front tyres, but given the regulations had already been changed for the following season to prevent such designs, nobody else copied it. 4. Marussia's Trojan horse. Marussia only managed 30 laps during the first pre-season test of 2014, so mileage was critical when it arrived in Bahrain for the second test. So when a computer virus, specifically Trojan malware, infected its systems and made it impossible to run the car for most of the day, that was the last thing the struggling team needed. Gil Bianchi did manage to complete 3 installation laps late on, but Marussia never really recovered, as a litany of problems restricted it to a grand total of 29 laps across the 4 days of running in Bahrain. 3. Red Bull's wingless wonder. Formula 1 drivers are used to having plenty of spares lying around, but this isn't always the case during pre-season testing, as Daniel Kvyat discovered to his and Red Bull's cost at Jerez in 2015. Kvyat took over from teammate Daniel Ricciardo for the second day of pre-season testing, but in cold conditions and on cold tyres on his outlap, he spun coming out of the turn 2 right-hander and lightly crunched his front wing in the tyre barrier. Red Bull didn't have a spare and wasn't able to repair the damage in time for it to run again for the rest of the day. But the team made the most of it, sending Kvyat back out to gather what data was possible, with the front wing and its supports missing. Kvyat completed only 18 slow laps and didn't register a lap time, and not even the Red Bull camouflage livery could hide the fact that his error had pretty much ruined a valuable test day. 2. Alonso's mystery crash. The mystery that once shrouded testing crashes has been eradicated by the comprehensive coverage in recent years, with one exception. When Fernando Alonso hit the inside wall at the exit of Turn 3 on the final day of the second pre-season test in Barcelona in 2015, there were all sorts of theories. He'd been electrocuted, he'd blacked out behind the wheel, he'd suffered a seizure. All of these were incorrectly speculated on as causes. It wasn't helped by McLaren team boss Ron Dennis denying Alonso had suffered a concussion, only for Alonso to then spend 3 nights in hospital and miss the first race of the season. Dennis did later admit he was wrong to say there was no concussion, with Alonso's absence from Australia because of a fear of a secondary concussion so close to the initial crash. McLaren blamed the off on an unexpected gust of wind destabilising the car, but it wasn't until the F1 circus arrived for the second race of the season in Malaysia that Alonso provided his account of the accident. He blamed a steering problem for sending him into the wall and revealed McLaren had changed components in the steering rack as a result. Alonso was soon back to his best, showing that whatever the cause of the crash, there were no long-term effects. 1. Prost disguises himself. After being sacked by Ferrari in acrimonious circumstances at the end of 1991, Alain Prost was left without a drive for the following season. But he was courted by French team Ligier and even tested its car several times pre-season. Prost went incognito for the first Ligier test at Paul Ricard in January, wearing the tricolor helmet of compatriot Eric Comas. At the time, the team claimed this was because his own lacked the required radio fittings, and white overalls. He tried out the Ligier Renault JS37, and he showed impressive pace compared to regular driver Thierry Boutsen. Given the impossibility of keeping his test secret, his subsequent running was conducted as Alain Prost. He completed significant test mileage at Paul Ricard, Manicourt and Estoril, but a deal that would have ultimately led to Prost being given a controlling stake in the team didn't come to pass because of a lack of backing. Prost's final decision didn't come until after the opening race of the season at Kyalami, where Ligier ran in the midfield. The news came to the relief of Comas, who would have lost his Ligier drive to accommodate Prost.